proceed to the address by Swami Atmashraddhananda Maharaj. Before address, I would like to give a brief introduction. He joined Ramakrishna Matha in 1989. Previously, he has also guided Vivekananda studies circle at IIT Madras for 12 years, since 2004 to 2016. He was also chief editor of Vedant Kesari monthly magazine there. He came to Kanpur Ashram, Sri Ramakrishna Ashram, Mission Ashram, Kanpur in 2018, and since 2018 he is guiding Vivekananda Samiti IT Kanpur. So we welcome, we invite Swami Atmashraddhananda.
So thank you very much for the invitation and for your welcome. So I'm very happy to get this warm welcome and for the kind words by the director, Dr. Karandikar ji, and also in the audience, Professor Tripathi and Yogesh ji and all others, Arnav ji, and Vivekananda study member, Vivekananda study or Samiti members, and all those who are hearing this, something about Swami Vivekananda for the first time. I shall begin with a prayer to Swami Vivekananda. This is a shloka in praise of Swami Vivekananda, composed by his brother disciple, which means he was of the same age, and he had seen him very closely. It's not just praise, it is something he had seen very closely. His name was Swami Ramakrishnananda ji, who started the Ramakrishna mission's activities in South India from its beginning of Madras. The shloka is this: Om Namah Shri Atirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Meaning, I bow down to Vivekananda, who was an excellent among the monks, Yatirajaya, and who was full of knowledge, full of power of Viveka, the rightful thinking. And through that, he was full of existence, bliss, and joy, and removing the misery of others. So this is the annual event now. We have the Adi Parv written here, meaning the inauguration of the annual activities. And we generally like that such an event should happen. In IIT Madras, we used to have the inaugural function, as they introduced that. I was there for about 12 years. And again, when I was in Belur Math for about 2 years, to IIT Kharagpur also for about 2 years, I was going there. So it has been quite a relationship with IIT for the last 18 years, so to say. It's a joy to share my thoughts, share a few facts and few insights from Swami Vivekananda. The subject I will speak on is Vivekananda, his message and his contribution. Now, Vivekananda is a word which most we Indians know. But what is Swami Vivekananda? It's just like the proverbial story of the elephant. It's a Buddhist story. There's a big elephant and there is 6 blind men. And so they haven't seen any time because they are blind. So they go to the elephant and they touch different parts of the elephant and they arrive at their own conclusions. So somebody touches a trunk and he feels it is like a snake. So elephant is a snake. So somebody touches the ear and he feels it's like a large hand fan, pankha. Then someone touches the leg and feels it is a tree trunk or a pillar. And someone touches the tail and feels it's a rope. And the tusk, when somebody touches, he feels it's a spear. It's like something which is fitted there. So all are touching elephant, but all are kind of getting only a limited picture of the elephant. Same way, when we go to Swami Vivekananda, he has got such huge personality, such a multifaceted personality, that if you say, this is Vivekananda, nothing more, then you are running the risk of being like the blind man, touching only the one part of the elephant. So, what is that multifaceted personality of Swami Vivekananda? I just refer to some of them because there are many more things which can be said, but I'll restrict myself to that. First thing that would come to us when we think of Swami Vivekananda, that he was a great sage. He was a spiritual luminary whose spirituality is the source of his rest of the personality. So his spirituality deep, there is a book on Swami Vivekananda called Life of Swami Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciples in 2 volumes. It begins, it was published 100 years back. So it begins with an introduction and says, to read Vivekananda is to read what is spiritual life. And that is a thing given to by one of the Western disciples of Swamiji. So this is a fun thing. His remarkable personality as a sage. And as a sage, one quality is that he is very unselfish and he is full of compassion. One of the monks, senior monks of the Ramakrishna mission used to call him as Paramadayal, one who is full of compassion. So that's one thing about a saint. Saintliness is not about some name and some dress and certain external things. It is the inner core of a person, where he is, what is his wisdom, his courage, his great sense of love, unselfishness, his sense of austerity. That makes a saint. And that's what we see in Swami Vivekananda's life. Another way we can look at Swami Vivekananda is that he was a great patriot. That is something very unusual. We know great sages, but we, as far as our knowledge goes, we live in a country of great sages who are born in our country, and we have a tradition of thousands of years. It's not that India was born in 1947. For thousands of years, we have had this tradition, beginning with the Vedic rishis. Then you have the great acharyas, Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Vallabhacharya, or the great sages in the medieval time, be it Ramananda or Guru Nanak Dev or the great Mirabai or the Alvars and Nayanars of the South India, or many more. But this kind of patriotism that you see in Swami Vivekananda, it is unique to him. Now, how did this patriotism come to him? Maybe because he had gone around the country, he had seen the extraordinariness of the country. The great Bal Gangadhar Tilak once described Swami Vivekananda as someone like Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya. Bal Gangadhar Tilak had met Swami Vivekananda on 2 or 3 occasions. Swamiji had stayed with him in Pune, and later Tilakji had gone to Belur Mutt, which Swamiji founded, and he had spent some time there. So he used to say, like Shankaracharya 12 centuries back, going across the country, understanding what the country is, and knitting it through his spiritual wisdom, Swami Vivekananda also knitted the whole country. He understood the whole country by going around the country. Another way, all these things I'll speak about it a little later. Another way you can look at Swami Vivekananda is a great philosopher, a great thinker. His philosophy of man-making, of character building, or his psychology, his approach to psychology, his approach to many of the burning issues which come to the human mind, is itself a great subject. If you read his 9-volume complete works, Swami Vivekananda spoke, and more than writing, it is speaking. So he did speak, and he wrote poems, and he wrote letters. You'll be surprised that he wrote nearly 800 letters, which are all available to us now. And none of these letters are just simple, oh, how are you? And I'm doing well. Not that much. Some of them are very deep. Of course, these days, letter writing itself, even this is also going away. And we are just in the message writing, or even further to the icons, just emojis, and we just say. So, but he had when he was in Madras, for instance, one day when he had finished speaking to people at night, he tells someone, so, okay, you go and take rest. Now I will go for my writing a letter. And he would write some 10-page letter, some 15-page one, where you have got so many guidelines, so many insights. So we have a small book called Letters of Swami Vivekananda, but that's very, very limited. Hardly just 200, 250 letters are there. But the rest of it is in the complete works, which you can buy later and see them. So these things can give an idea. He deals with various types of issues, whether it is beginning with the, his message can be in fact seen that way. It can be divided into two ways. The message which he gave when he went to the West, when he spoke at the Parliament of Religions, and later in America in more than 100 cities. He also had a second visit. This is the first visit where he spent nearly 4 to 5 years there. And the second visit again in 1899 for about 1 year. The second visit's lectures are not much recorded, in which not noted down much, but the first visit's lectures are much more recorded. So what an insight into life. The famous Karma Yoga lectures or Jnana Yoga lectures or Raja Yoga lectures, or many of the things like what is his insights into, in those days, whatever understanding of science was, and science and materialism and spirituality, all that you'll find in these complete works of Swami Vivekananda. By the way, they're available digitally also. So he was such a thinker, such a philosopher, that he influenced many international thinkers. Leo Tolstoy, for instance, of Russia, read his teachings. And there was one, Mr. Datta, who presented him a copy, and he was very impressed with that. He said, give me some more of that. It is so mind-broadening, he used the term. It is so mind-broadening. Again, Swamiji not only influenced one thinker there, you have a full book on great thinkers on Swami Vivekananda. There are around 30 thinkers, their opinions are given there. Like you have got Mahatma Gandhi, how he was influenced, or Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, how he was influenced, and how some of the later people have been influenced by Swami Vivekananda's ideas. All that is that speaks of his thing as a thinker, as a philosopher. Again, another aspect of Vivekananda's contribution and his message is in the field of social reform. But he did not believe in some superficial social reform. In those days, let's go back to 120 years, 130 years back. So in those days, people spoke of widow remarriage, or they spoke of how there should be no child marriage. Swami Vivekananda said, no, you are busy with those very small issues. I want to go to the root and branch reform. Go to the very depth of the issue. And he gave remarkable speeches when he came from the West back to India. So there are two types, as I said. One is the message which he gave when he was in the West, where it is more philosophical, more essence of spirituality. And when he comes back to India, as a true Indian, as a lover of Indian, he does not indulge in any criticism of India when he goes outside India. In fact, he places things very clearly. He puts them in perspective. Somebody says, oh, people in India, they do all kinds of tapas, and sitting on the nails and sitting and sometimes standing. I myself have seen a monk in Kumbh Mela who had kept his hand up for about 12 years. So you also might come across such people. So you will say, well, they're all very peculiar people, and they're very andavishwasis. Swamiji put it this way. Say, their search for truth is real. The method may not be right. Can be more scientific. Method can be more scientific. So you see how Swami Vivekananda put the things in perspective. But when he came back to India, he had the courage to call a spade a spade. He said, look, you people need to change yourself. You need to change your society. He gave lectures beginning from Colombo. Colombo was part of the British India in those days. So from Colombo, he came to Rameshwaram, then a number of cities in Tamil Nadu, today's Tamil Nadu, and then came to Kolkata, and then he went even what we call as Lahore and other places, and then Almora. All these lectures, around 30 of them, that speak of his understanding. They were all, they were not written down and spoken. you wonder at the depth of his thoughts there. He has given a lecture called My Plan of Campaign in Madras, another lecture called Future of India. There he gives an understanding of what Indian society is, wherein lies its weakness, wherein lies its strength, and where things need to be changed. And he puts it with the perspective of both history as well as his understanding of the Indian scriptures or the Hindu scriptures. Very clearly he puts them. He sometimes places before us such difficult conditions also. Is how do we solve that? For instance, he says how the bhashyas, various acharyas have written bhashyas. So bhashyas are the commentaries on, say, on the Bhagavad Gita or on the Brahma Sutras or things like that. So how did these various bhashyas come up? Then Swamiji says, look, the Sanskrit language is such, you can, like Indian rubber, you can extend it this way also and that way also. So that's how the bhashyas are written. So where do we finally reach to? He said, go to the essence of what they are trying to say. And the essence is humanism. Essence is love for humanity. Essence is that there is a reality beyond the senses and we acknowledge that. So that is how he put it across. In famous Madras lecture, he said, you shall be nearer heaven by playing football than reading the Bhagavad Gita. With your muscles stronger, you will be able to understand Gita better. You know, some people who do not understand this well, they say perhaps Swami Vivekananda said, better play football than read Gita. But that's not the meaning. That's not the meaning. The meaning is that he says that develop physical strength, moral strength, mental strength, and then you will understand the real message of the Gita better. So this is social reform he spoke of. He spoke of how we can raise the lower classes to, in those days nobody even had thought of it. And he spoke because he had gone around the country and he'd seen the difficulties. Again, he was such a person. When he spoke, it was like, in today's language, you say he was a self-help master. You know, in self-help books, you have come up, be brave, have faith in yourself, get rid of your difficulties, your bad habits, or your things which you are trying to struggle with. So you might say that he was the one who began this kind of writing in India, this self-help. Now we have so many people who are actually paraphrasing Swami Vivekananda's words. And unfortunately on internet, lot of unauthentic quotes of Swami Vivekananda are also available. And unauthentic stories also. That's very unfortunate. That something which Swamiji has never said, they said Swami Vivekananda said this. And something which never happened, and this has happened to Swami Vivekananda. So you should go back to his biography, the official biography, the life of Swami Vivekananda by Eastern and Western disciple, and go back to the complete works before you quote Swami Vivekananda. Before you say, this is what Vivekananda said. So he was like that self-help books which he has presented. If you read his a compilation called Personality Development, a small little book, you will be surprised to see how much about personality development he has spoken of in today's term. So personality development is not just about some external polishing of the personality. It is the internal man, which is the real, where the real thing has to happen. Again, Swamiji was the ambassador of India to the West. He was the first monk to travel or cross the 7 seas and go to America. In fact, in England possibly, he was asked, if you say that your rishis were very great, if you say that your rishis were having that remarkable wisdom, they had such realizations, why did they not come to England? And Swami Vivekananda replied to them, where was England? At that time, where was England? It is such an old thing. So in between, we have this huge gap, and then Swami Vivekananda going there. It was not a small thing. In those days of today, going to America is much easier. You simply take a flight and go there, but in those days, it is all by ship. And that too by a monk, because people would have thought that we can he has crossed the seven seas, Kalapani, so he may be excommunicated from the community. That kind of feeling was there, and it did happen for some extent, to some extent, but he did not care. So Swamiji is all these some aspects which I have spoken to, and yet more. There are many more aspects which, as you go through his personality, his message, you will get to see. A very brief biographical overview of his life. That he was born around 159 years back in 1863 in Kolkata. His parents, father was a wealthy lawyer, well known for his practice. He had built a huge house, and he was born as Narendranath Datta, and he grew up there. That house is there in Kolkata. Any one of you going to Kolkata, please visit that house. It's a beautiful place. After much struggle, the Ramakrishna Mission has been able to, acquire it around 20 years back or so. Abdul Kalam ji, opened that when it was renovated and made ready for the public. So there he was born, there he grew up, and he was like any other child, but very intelligent, very energetic, very curious. There are many stories about how, as a child, he would inquire about truth, and how said, "I don't be afraid of things." And at the same time, he was so full of compassion for others. Many stories about that. When he came of age, he was in his teens, he started reading philosophy. In fact, he read philosophy very well, the Western philosophy especially. And he wrote a letter to one of the Western philosophers of those days when he was in college. And the philosopher was so impressed, he wrote back. The letter was addressed to Professor Narendranath, though he was only a student. So he had pointed out a few flaws in the professor's certain things, and he said, "I will try to improve it in the next edition." So he was deeply interested in Western philosophy. At the same time, he had his own faith, which he had inherited from his parents, from his family. So a conflict started in his mind, because Western philosophy does not speak of God realization. It doesn't speak of self-realization. It speaks of an intellectual approach, where only logic is there, where everything is, there's no mysticism there much. So this conflict started in his mind, and at one point of time, he started going to various people asking whether they have seen God. He went to well-known people of Calcutta on those days, and finally he reached Sri Ramakrishna. Of course, he had heard about Sri Ramakrishna from his English teacher, William Hastie, who had said that while teaching, when the professor was teaching about an English poem called Excursion, and he had said that this poem speaks of some very extraordinary state of mind, and in these modern times, it is only one person whom I know who has this extraordinary state of mind, and that is that is Sri Ramakrishna. So that's the first time he had heard about him. And later, along with a friend, he went to Dakshineshwar, where Sri Ramakrishna lived. And the very first meeting, he asked him, "Sir, have you seen God?" What he had heard from others, he thought he'd get the same answer. The others had dodged the answer. So when he asked Sri Ramakrishna, he said, "Yes, I have seen God." He was, stumbled. What is it? And then not only that, Sri Ramakrishna said, "Not only I have seen God, I see more clearly than I see you. And if you want, you also can see God." This was like a big bomb in his, exploding in his life. But all these days, he had only heard philosophy, or he had heard some theory. But here is some practical man. And then the struggle started. He first thought Sri Ramakrishna was out of his mind. Many times he interacted with him. He said, possibly he is not a normal one. But when he went nearer, he found he was so normal. Not only that, he was such an extraordinary, pure character. He was deeply impressed. And with his critical thinking, he started analyzing him, he started understanding him, and he also appreciated, Sri Ramakrishna also very much appreciated his critical thinking. He wouldn't tell him, "No, you have to believe in this. You have to believe in this." No, take your time. One time he told Sri Ramakrishna, All these gods and goddesses which you see in your visions, they're all imaginary. Ramakrishna smiled and said, wait, time will come, you will understand. He did not become angry with him that you are questioning me. So like that, the days went, and he really was deep into a spiritual practice which Ramakrishna taught him. And he had his highest experience as a young man. He could be in his 20s when he had that experience, what we call as the highest spiritual experience. And as the days passed, 5 years nearly, he was with Sri Ramakrishna like that. And then in 1886, after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, he had options before him. He was a brilliant student. Sometimes he used to get a vision. It's either whether I could become a well-known lawyer and a well-known person of Calcutta city, or I could become a monk living a life of tapasya and service. Sometimes he will be thinking of this and sometimes of that, and finally he decided, no, my path is decided. And finally, in the beginning of 87, along with other, in 1887, he, along with some 10 other brother disciples, they took monastic vow, and they also founded one monastery in Baranagar in Kolkata. And then he went on a pilgrimage, so to say. For next 5 to 6 years, he was moving around the country. There's no fixed agenda. So maybe he started from Kolkata, came to Kashi, where from there he met some of the well-known saints of Kashi in those days. And then he came to Ghazipur near Kashi, and then again he went to Mathura, Delhi, went to Himalayas. He went to some caves also. Those caves are there these days. If you go to Almora, near Almora, Kasar Devi and some other cave is there, where it is written Swami Vivekananda meditated here. even in Mount Abu, there is one cave similarly, which is attributed to Swami Vivekananda meditated there. And then he came to Rajasthan, to Gujarat, and then Maharashtra, and down to south. So like this 5-6 years went. And he had in those days interacted with all kinds of people. The kings, for instance. In those days we had kings, you see. The kings and the nawabs of those days, or the people who are very learned. People who are very well versed in scriptures. For instance, he stayed in Porbandar in Gujarat, where the main person there, the administrator, he was a very, very learned person. Swamiji stayed with him for 4 months and learnt many things. And later, Swamiji also, when he was in Rajasthan, he was learning Sanskrit grammar. As he was traveling, he was learning also. He was meeting people, he was observing what's happening in the country. He had seen the poverty, extreme poverty, and extreme misery which people were undergoing. So he was deeply moved by that. Finally, after all these travels of interacting and living with people, he reached Kanyakumari. That's a turning point, Kanyakumari. Kanyakumari, as you know, it is the last rock in the sea. It's called Shripadapara in Tamil. So there you have the Kanyakumari temple is on the shore, and this is there inside, and Swami Vivekananda swam through and went there. And he was deeply pained by what he had seen in India. It's like a pained child going to mother and expressing himself. So he went to Divine Mother, so to say, and for 3 days he was meditating on India, India's past, because he was very good in history. Swami Vivekananda was very fond of history. So he had known India's past for thousands of years, and he also had seen the present. So he was thinking about India's future also. What should be the India's future? Those 3 days, what really transpired, we do not know. But we know this, that he meditated in 1892 December. And then there he decided that I'll go to the West and I will carry the message of India to the West. He had heard about, after he came out in Madras, he had heard about a World Parliament of Religions happening. So he decided to go, and the devotees arranged for things. It's a long story. It's a story of lot of struggle, lot of sacrifice. People in those days never knew what kind of weather was there in America. So they never gave Swamiji any woolen clothes. When he reached there, it was such a difficult time for him. Anyway, One important point here is when he left in 1893 by ship, on the ship on board was Jamshedji Tataji. And Tataji was very impressed with Swami Vivekananda. And during their discussion, Swamiji suggested to him that we should start some scientific research institutes in India. Nobody had thought of it in those days. That speaks of his, great prophetic vision about India. And Jamshedji Tata noted it in his mind. And after some time, after they departed at Vancouver, and then at maybe after 4 years or so, or 5 years, he wrote a letter to Swami Vivekananda. That, dear Swamiji, please recall our meeting, our conversation on the place where we had met. And you had suggested that we start the Scientific Research Institute. So I am going to start on Scientific Research Institute. You please become its director. Of course, Swami Vivekananda did not become the director, but that was a very historic thing. That in due course, this happened maybe in 1901 or so. In 1902, Swamiji had passed away. So after his passing away, after a few years, Jamshedji Tata also passed away. But the money that he had left, it was around 30 lakhs of rupees. With lot of struggle by Sister Nivedita and Josephine MacLeod, two disciples of Swami Vivekananda, Western disciples, and some other help, finally, Indian Institute of Sciences, Bangalore was started. So we owe a lot to Swami Vivekananda for scientific research in India also. Again, when he went to the West, when he went and reached the Chicago city, he was surprised to see there's such a huge, a Columbian exposition which had been put up there. For 10 days, every day he will go. So that was the time when America had completed 400 years of its founding. And the government of USA had put up a huge exhibition, putting on display whatever achievements they have done in various fields of life, including technology, science, society, art, etc. And he was surprised. He had come from a country which is so backward at that time, so poor, and when we saw that, he was deeply impressed. But to his surprise, he found that the Parliament of Religion, which was part of this event, was still away, and he had no introduction from that. And it was very costly to stay there. So he went to Boston and he stayed in one village, and there he happened to meet a famous professor of Harvard. And professor asked him, "Why are you here in America?" And he said, "I'm here because I have to speak at the Parliament, but I have no introduction." To which the professor said, "To ask you, Swami, your right to speak is like asking the sun its right to shine." And then he wrote a letter. "Here is a man who is more learned than all our professors of America put together." And that was the introduction of Swami Vivekananda for that Parliament of Religion. When he went there, he had a stage fear to begin with. But finally, when he spoke, that itself is something which cannot be explained. Just 2-minute speech, sisters and brothers of America, it begins with. And that speech has been celebrated, so to say. We don't celebrate a speech, but we have celebrated Swami Vivekananda's speech, 125th year of Swami Vivekananda's Chicago speech. It was a series of functions were held. Because that speech, it created a new light or a new thinking in the Western world. He spoke of the divinity of man. That man is not just a sinner, nor he is not just his body and mind. There's infinite possibility in man. There is tremendous potential in every human being, and that is his divine heritage. Actually, he was quoting from the Upanishads directly. Like Shunvantu Vishve Amritasya Putraha Ai Dhamani Vishwani Tasya Shveta Shatrupancha. So he was quoting its English translation. Ye are the children of immortal bliss. Ye are not sinners. It's a sin to call a man so. Think of this particular sentence. Think of the people who get into some kind of depression, negative thinking, into a thing all the time, I can't do, I can't do, I can't do. Make them remember these words of Swami Vivekananda. Look, there is so much of potential in you. There is so much of divinity in you. Why do you forget that? So this is how that first speech was delivered. He gave some 8 speeches there. Later, he when he was in the his deep feeling. You see, he was on the, I think, first or second speech. He was taken to a rich man's house or a hotel where he was, given room. And the morning when they came to his room, they found that he was lying on the he was actually sleeping on the floor with his pillow fully wet with tears. Now, what had happened, Swami? Did we make any mistake in our arrangement? Some problem was there? I said, no. I was thinking, here I am enjoying these luxuries, and there are my countrymen way back in India who don't have even one meal to eat. So that was a deep feeling. As I said in the beginning, a saint is one who really feels for others. If he cannot feel for others, whatever else may be, he has not reached that state. So, like that, about 4 years he preached. About in 1895, for a few months, he was in a cottage in near New York. We have Vedanta Society there now. So for 2 months he was there. And later on, in between he visited England 2-3 months and came back. And then in 1897, visiting some other countries, he came to India. And that was where he gave these lectures from Colombo to Almora. Interestingly, these lectures from Colombo to Almora were a source of India's national freedom. You may not know this history. Generally, we are not even told, even if you want to know, that how this history has happened. In what has happened is, in 1905, we have the freedom struggle actually picking up. But before that, it was Swami Vivekananda's books, especially these lectures from Colombo to Almora, which was silently inspiring and guiding the people. Many of the revolutionaries later on, young people from Bengal to begin with, and other parts of India later, they found that they had their personal libraries, and in those libraries, Swami Vivekananda's lectures from Colombo to Almora was invariably there. At one point of time, and there's another book called Letters of Swami Vivekananda. At one point of time, the British government thought it is causing so much of trouble to us. Maybe we should ban this book. But that did not happen. But Swami Vivekananda inspired a new kind of nationalism. It was a spiritual nationalism. So he looked upon India not just as a geographical unit, but he saw it as a living being. He called it as a motherland, divine motherland. And he had seen it as a place where mankind's finest thoughts have originated. So why not let me? So he developed that love for India through that. Another thing, when he spoke of the development of India in those days, he spoke of the change that should happen. There's one important thing which he told there, and that is that it is not that all the time people should be taught only to practice austerities. He said a bit of materialism tuned to the needs of the people is very essential. And if Swami Vivekananda was physically present here today with us, he would be very happy. A lot of materialism has come. Because, first of all, that materialism will take away a sense of, oh, I should have it. And secondly, it will make you tired of itself. More materialism you go for, at one point of time you say, this is the line, beyond that what to do. Then you turn spiritual, you turn within. There is a beautiful verse in one of the Upanishad which says this, Parikshalokan karmachitan brahmanam nirvedamaya nasti asti akritena. A time comes when you have examined pariksha, lokan, whatever material comforts are available in this world. At that time, when you are looking for the eternal happiness, eternal peace, then you search for the divinity within. Then you go in search of the spiritual master and you go for a spiritual guidance in life. But first you have to go through that. So it's not that all the time people should be only taught to practice austerities. That was what Swami Vivekananda said. Now, in 1895, on 1st of May, 1897, 1st of May, he founded the Ramakrishna Mission. We are celebrating the 125th year of Ramakrishna Mission. Little later, About a year later, he established the Belur Mutt. That's on the banks of Ganga near Kolkata. That's where Swami Vivekananda lived, and finally he gave up his body there. And again, for 1 year, to improve his health, because he had been constantly traveling, constantly speaking, meeting people. So he went to the West again. He was in England for about a month or so, and then he went to America. He was in Bay Area, and after a year, through 3-4 countries, he came back. To one important event here, that is, he met Nicholas Tesla on his way back. Nicholas Tesla, as you know, I don't need to say anything about him. He was so impressed with Swami Vivekananda. They sat and discussed at length about 2 things, that is, Akasha and Prana. And these 2 things he has written in his personal notebook also. So Swamiji has left an influence or an impact on the scientific thinkers of those days. And then, of course, Swami Vivekananda came back, and he started activities. He visited Mayavati. Mayavati is an important place. That is in the Himalayas, which he wanted that should be established. And in 1902, on the 4th of July, in Samadhi, he passed away in Bedurmat. Now, what was Swami Vivekananda's message? What is the takeaway for us? So, I would put it this way. First of all, that Swami Vivekananda's message is not yet fully complete. He said, "It may be that I shall cast off my body like a worn-out garment, but I shall not stop inspiring mankind until it knows it is one with God." So he's still with us. His message is still with us, inspiring us. Second, he gave us a goal in life. His message is, what is that goal? Seek your own divine nature. Now, there are little philosophies required to understand that. What is this divine nature about us? So, if you analyze, if you turn within, if you make a self-analysis. So, we have the body, we have the mind, and that is where most of the Western thinking stops. We have the body and we have the mind. A bit of prana or vital energy these days is spoken of. That there is vital energy in us. But what the Vedantic tradition, the Upanishad says that we have a third thing in us, which is the spirit or Atman. And that is where he said we should all try to find our fulfillment in. He quoted Upanishads extensively, especially from the Katha Upanishad or Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. He said the Upanishads are the real source of strength. He said they have strength and fearlessness. He says in other scriptures, sometimes you find some fear, fear of this, fear of that is created. In Upanishad, there is no fear. In fact, our director sir is there. His name is indicative of that. Be Abhay. So he uses the word Abhihi, which means be free from any fear. Be fearless. So he said that should be the purpose of life. That we should finally discover our own divine nature. Another message which he gave to all of us is that, once somebody asks on Vivekananda, what can I do for you? So suppose you have some very dear friend and you have some event, maybe birthday or something, and you go and ask him, what would you like me to give you? Something like that. Swami Vivekananda was asked, what can I do for you? He said, love India. How deeply he was in his identification with India. If you want to do something for me, love India. So this is a message for all of us. We should love India. Love India, not only, a temporary, some emotion, which is also okay, but go deeper. Study your own history. Study your own roots. Study your own culture. And if you find something is very inspiring, please accept it. And if you find something is not very inspiring, try to find why it came and try to improve over it. We need not indulge in endless criticism of our own country, endless criticism of our own traditions. So love India and have faith that you are an Indian and you have such a ancient culture to speak of. Swami Vivekananda spoke of the harmony of 4 yogas in life. 4 yogas: Karma Yoga, which means unselfish work; Jnana Yoga, which means pure self-analysis and arriving at jnana or knowledge, self-knowledge; Raj Yoga, which means learning to control the mind, focus the mind, purify the mind; and finally, the Bhakti Yoga, where you develop a better direction, a divine direction for your normal inner emotion called love. So that Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, all that if you combine in your life, you attain the very goal of life. This is what he spoke of. And finally, he spoke of unselfish service to others. This is one of the messages of very strong Swami Vivekananda's message. Or Vivekananda Samiti also does in their own way. And the Ramakrishna Mission, through its various activities across the world, in various ways. Right here in Kanpur itself, we have some activities like we have charitable dispensary or a school and a reading room for the students or a class for the poor children and all that. So like that, throughout India, we have these activities. Why did he speak so much about that? He said, this is the age of man. And in this age of man, man will have to do a lot for man. We will have to do service to others. That's the way. In fact, the service to others, he did not just speak in terms of some social service. Some people have social services. No, not that. He spoke of it as a worship. Just as you can worship God in temple through an image, why can't you worship God through the living images of God called the human beings? There's one difference, obviously. The other image, it doesn't protest, it doesn't complain. But if you try to serve the human image, you know what happens. When you start serving them, they come with their own issues. But he said this is the way of life. He called it as Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. Try to serve others as embodiments of God. So the question might come, what about those who are not so good? You said they are also embodiments of God. What about the evil? What about the criminals? What about the wrongdoers? To this, he would quote Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. He would say, suppose you have got an old kerosene lamp. You have the chimney, and the chimney is getting, light it every day, and a thin layer of carbon monoxide settles on it. So you light the lamp, but still light doesn't come out because it is all covered black. Then you take a piece of cotton or a cloth or a paper and clean it up, and it comes out. The same way human beings are. It is the same light present in all human beings. But in some cases, it is this dark film of samskaras, of wrong habits and thinkings, which has kind of obstructed their divine light. So clean it up and you allow that divinity to come. So the difference between one person and another person is only how much manifestation is happening, not as a content. Content is same. So he spoke of unselfish service, and he said service can be done at the physical level. You help others physically, or you help them intellectually, or you help them spiritually. In any of these ways, you can help others. So we should not say that only a person should do only the physical service. There's a lot of need for intellectual and spiritual service now. As our material needs are becoming satisfied and we are becoming more advanced materially, more and more need for counseling is coming. More and more people are requiring an emotional support, a clearer understanding of what's the goal of life, how to manage difficult situations in life, how to accept success in life, and how to accept failure in life. Both are important. When they say, if you have success, don't take it to your head, and if you have failure, don't take it to heart. So how do we solve these things? People, if you don't give them a bicycle, they may go into depression. There are people like that. Or you don't have something happening in your life which you wanted, you run into a deep sense of negative thinking. Now, how do we come out of it? Swami Vivekananda spoke of a service at that level also. And that level is when you provide positive, helpful thoughts to all. So this is all I thought I'll share this evening with you. Swami Vivekananda's famous words, please remember them. He said, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." Fix the goal for yourself. As you might discover a lower goal, right now it may be the highest goal for you, but maybe a lower goal from a spiritual angle. Go on, let you find new goal, a higher goal and higher goal, and stop not till the goal is reached. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes. We thank Shraddha Swami Atmashraddhananda Maharaj for his enlightening speech. Now we'll proceed towards a meditation, a short meditation session. After that, we'll have questions.
As they take seat, I'll just do a small introduction. And that is, Swami Vivekananda translated the famous Patanjali Yoga Sutras into English. That was the first translation in English when he went to the West. And it is that speaks of how much understanding of meditation he had, because these sutras speak about, they deal with the mind. When he was a little boy, when he came to Sri Ramakrishna, in fact, asked him this question. When he was a boy, before sleeping, he used to experience the kind of light between his eyebrows. And like a point, it will begin, it will spread, and it will cover the whole of his face and whole of his body, and he will fall into sleep. Then somebody asked him, Sri Ramakrishna was asking, do you experience this? He said, yes. You never told this. He said, no, I thought everybody has it. Then he said, this comes to only that person who is an expert in meditation. So he was a dhyana siddha, so to say. Siddha is expert. So, based on what Swami Vivekananda has spoken about dhyana, about 4 or 5 minutes, we'll try to practice meditation. So please sit straight. Wherever you are, please sit straight. Let us keep our spine straight. Close your eyes. Keep your hands in front. Let us sit straight, quietly. Sthiram Sukham Asanam. That's the right posture for meditation, in which we are without any movement and comfortable. Feel relaxed. Let the body, let the mind be relaxed. Let us not think about what immediate work we have. Let us not be thinking about the past. Let us try to be physically and mentally present in the present. Let us pray for the well-being of all. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. May all beings be at peace. May no one be subject to misery or pain. May our prayer for the well-being of others, for everyone in this hall, in this institute, in this city, in this state, in this country, for all countries, for all human beings, for all living beings. Keep your mind in the present moment. And let us pray to the Almighty for strength of body, strength of mind, pure mind, for divine guidance, for taking us in the right path. Focus on your breathing for a while. Feel how you are breathing in and breathing out. How this extraordinary phenomena of breathing is happening. How it happens when we are awake or when we are asleep or whatever we do. This is the background music, this breathing. Now try to watch your thoughts, which means be separate. Feel that you are different from your thoughts. A sense of witness. We just watch our thoughts without reacting. Our mind has so many thoughts, old memories, or future plans. Let us try to feel separate from all this. This is the function of the mind, and we stand apart, like the witness, watching. And now think of a flame in the center of your chest, a divine flame, like the flame of a burning candle, unflickering, unmoving. Think of it as the very source of divinity, strength, purity. And try to gather your mental focus on that as much as possible. We shall meditate or do this inner concentration for a few minutes. At the end, we'll close by the prayer of peace. Now let us conclude by chanting Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now you can open the eyes. So this concludes our session. If there are any queries, we should try to answer them. Yes.
I think Swami, can I answer this? Maybe we can conclude the program and then have the discussion at the question answer with the students. Is that okay?
It's okay. Let's take this question.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
Comparing the Eastern philosophy, in Buddhism, people believe that there is no individual Atman. Even though the mode of inquiry like meditation is same for Hinduism as well as Buddhism, why they ended up in like believing in two different types of things? Like in Buddhism, they are not believing in individual Atman. They only believe in an ultimate consciousness of Dharma. So why the path we took is same, even though the meditation techniques are different? Why they believe in two separate groups?
So these differences in understanding of, say, the methods, or how these differences come, it's all because of human nature. So the human nature is so wide. Everyone has his own. In fact, Swami Vivekananda one place he says, "I would be happy if everybody has his own religion, not one religion. Everybody should have his own religion." So if there are 7 billion people, 7 billion religions. So what he means by that is approach to the ultimate reality. So we are differently constituted. So we have the idea of Ishta Devata in the Sanatana Dharma. The Ishta Devata itself is that idea that there are differences in human approach. So they try to see it from the angle of analysis of the mind. So they approach that way. But very interestingly, while Buddhism did proceed like that, but all the images and temples and statues in India, they started only after Buddhism came into picture. And historically, I remember our Swami, Revered Swami Ranganathananda Ji Maharaj. I heard his lecture years ago, and he spoke at length about it. This is the great Buddha. He spoke of as if no God. But after him, he himself was made a God. So himself, his images came up everywhere. Before that, there were not so many images in India. So we'll have to accept that there are different approaches. See, within the Sanatana approach or within any other approach, there are so many differences. How did these differences come? Basically from the point of, because our needs are different, our perceptions are different. Same thing you will see it in one way, another person sees another way. So although it is one reality, but approaches are different. This is what the Rig Veda speaks of, the ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. Though sat is one, vipraha, the learned people, speak of in various ways. In Swami Vivekananda's Future of India lecture, another one lecture he speaks of, he says, in the Indian philosophical journey, a very important landmark event happened when this verse was written. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. So people are not fanatical truth, so to say. My path alone is true. No, your path also can be true if it leads to the same goal. But you should not say that my path is wrong. You follow your path, I follow my path. So there have been differences, and I think the differences will continue to be there because the human minds are different. And for somebody, one particular thing appeals, just like food. Sri Ramakrishna used to speak of, let's say there is a mother and she is going to make aloo sabji and she has 4 children. And each one has his own need. Somebody likes aloo dum and somebody likes fried aloo and somebody likes them. and she makes everything for different child. So that kind of thing has been given to us, and that's how we follow.
So we'll take the question answers after.
Thank you very much.
Today we had a short meditation session. Tomorrow we'll have a regular meditation classes which happened at Yoga Hall in New Sec. So we have it tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. And now I would okay. So I would we would like to inform you all that we have Mr. Sharad Vivek Sagar. He will be in campus on August 16th. He is a model for youth aspiring for social entrepreneurship. He started his startup Dexterity Global to help needy young students to connect to the global education fraternity, and he was selected among the Forbes 30 under 30 social entrepreneurship leaders. So we'll have him here on August 16th for a talk. Now I'd like to invite our faculty advisor, Professor Anurag Tripathi, for concluding remarks.
So, I don't need. Thank you, everyone. I think we're already running late on time, and I think there are many questions also waiting. And so, what I would like to say is, I would like to thank first, Swamiji for really agreeing to come, be available, and sort of guide us. More importantly, reminding us the various facets of Swami Vivekananda, because I hope most of us will agree here that it doesn't really matter if you're interested in social service. Well, Vivekananda is for you. If you're interested in scientific achievement, if Nikola Tesla can get something from you, I'm sure all of us can gather and get something interesting, something more important, which probably will help. As Swamiji said, if you need something for self-help, of course, Swamiji, everybody is rephrasing whatever has been kind of, stated by him. So I think no matter which aspect of our personal lives, our sort of, professional lives, our social lives, our social glory for our nation, humanity, for the world, humanity, whatever aspect of life and, its advancement we are interested in, Swami Vivekananda has definitely something for us. And I can add probably a personal experience here. Whatever I know about Swami Vivekananda, or whatever, some things that I think we should typically help us in life, they are sort of, I think if I now recollect, thanks to Swamiji, I recollect they are primarily during my student days when I was reading such sort of, literature and all. After, once you come to the sort of, regular professional life, somehow these things take a back seat, and then you realize it's probably, through this talk and through these activities, even if you keep planning, you can't really, you'll think that, okay, I'll do this, some reading and nothing really happens. Such programs probably, if they keep happening more frequently, they'll remind us and probably keep us in touch with these ideas.